Hello, everybody, and either welcome or welcome back to my podcast. As always, if you do like this, please rate, comment, and subscribe. You can find me on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, and YouTube. So sometimes in the podcast game, you get lucky and the content gods provide. Now, for this episode, I wasn't quite sure which piece I wanted to do this on. I am doing it on the slate piece for the Grandkid Strike. Obviously, if you've seen the title, you already know which one I picked. But it was a toss-up between this one and the LA Review of Books article about how Pete Buttigieg is actually straight. And I will do an episode on that piece too, because both of them are equally offensive, but in very different ways, and I just couldn't pass up doing this slate piece because this is just, I don't know if it's meant to be satire. I don't think it is, but even if it is, this is like borderline offensive. Like, this is really pretty fucked up, to be completely honest. So let's go ahead and get into the piece. The title of it is The Grandkid Strike. Here's an idea. Change your parents' bad voting habits by refusing to breed. Really? Okay. And this is written by Christina Catarucci, who actually wrote the piece that I had covered probably about a month-ish back now, about Pete Buttigieg not being gay enough, basically. And that actually ended up being a really popular episode. I was surprised how many people were into that. But anyway, this piece is written by the same person that wrote that piece, so you kind of already know what we're in for. So let's go ahead. Opening paragraph of the piece. The actress and activist Alyssa Milano has drawn criticism in recent weeks for encouraging women to stop having sex in protest of the abortion bans the GOP has recently passed in several state legislatures. It's reminding people that we have control over our own bodies and how we use them, she told the Associated Press, noting that the tactic had been used to successful ends by women-led pacifist movements in Libya and among the Iroquois. Brief side note about those particular examples. Those sex strikes were meant to do a very, very specific thing. And then obviously once the thing was done, sex strike was off. But it wasn't like this vague, nebulous thing like Alyssa's sex strike was. So just brief side note. Sex strikes only work in very, 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 very specific circumstances. But moving back to the piece. Those wins aside, sex strikes rest on some faulty premises. That women don't have sexual needs of their own, that sex is a gift for women to bestow upon others, and that women only have sex with men. Plus, women and men in the U.S. have very similar views about abortion. Women are even slightly more likely to call themselves pro-life. The Republican men working to pass abortion bans are far more likely to be sleeping with women who share their opinions than with those withholding sex for political reasons. Good job there, Christina. You figured out the flaw in the plan. But you would think that would be, this would be the moment where I always come to this, like whenever I do one of these pieces, like there's a moment where you wonder why the person writing the piece didn't like write that graph, look at it, and then like close down their laptop and go do something else other than writing this piece and keep writing it. But she kept writing. But I admit that the prospect of harnessing one's sexual and reproductive powers for social good is a tempting one. So I'd like to present what I'd humbly consider a much better proposal. Instead of a sex strike, let's try a grandkid strike. This idea stemmed from a tweet by comedian and writer Ashley Nicole Black, who got a phone call from presidential candidate Senator Elizabeth Warren after asking if the famously proposal-happy senator had a plan to fix my love life. After the two women spoke, Black summed up the conversation on Twitter. We have a plan to get my mom grandkids, she wrote. It's very comprehensive and it does involve raising taxes on billionaires. Black surely meant this as a joke. But at Slate, some of us wondered if she just happened upon a brilliant new weapon of progressivism. Framing liberal policy platforms as the only way you'll get grandkids will make my dad Pokemon go to the polls, one of my colleagues mused. Holy fuck. That's not even a good joke. And if you don't know the nexus of the Pokemon Go to the polls joke, it was a really stupid, lame joke that Hillary Clinton did back in 2016. It was stupid then, it's stupid now. I cannot believe anybody non-ironically said Pokemon Go to the polls. Yeah. Anyway. Another set of Grandkid Strike would be like Handmaid's Tale, but in a good way. Meaning, I assume, that it's exactly the kind of radical response today's radical threats to equality, justice, and humanity demand. It's time to demand that baby boomers and Gen Xers decide which they'd rather have. The vague attachment to policies that have poisoned the earth and will soon make it difficult for anyone but the obscenely wealthy to live happy, healthy lives, or a pack of adorable munchkins in itty-bitty suspenders ready for unlimited tickle fights and cookie baking sessions. Setting aside the hyperbole of that paragraph, a thing I want to touch on this paragraph, and I'm going to come back to it later on in the piece, is this concept of children as objects, children as playthings, and not children as small human beings. Like, there's this portrayal in this piece of children just as like toys or like dolls that you take off a shelf and you play with and you put them back up on a shelf, and not really acknowledging that this is a small human life form. And yeah, it's kind of just, it's a really disconcerting way of discussing children. And just for the record, I mean, I'm childless by choice. Like, I don't have kids, I don't want kids, and even I find the way that kids are discussed in this piece to be a bit disturbing. So anyway, moving back to the piece. The parent who will die if her adult child does not procreate with haste is one reductive stereotype that is almost entirely based in truth. I have never met a parent who isn't already dreaming about how much fun it'll be to have a few roly-poly wee ones, who are ultimately someone else's responsibility, around. I've already decided that I'm not having kids, and even I desperately want some grandkids to spoil and squeeze and take to the zoo. I'm starting to think that whatever innate desire compels some people to have children is actually a sublimated thirst for grandchildren. The first step towards a goal that's an entire generation away. What the fuck did I just read? First of all, my parents know that I'm not having kids. Everybody's accepted it. Everybody's cool with it. Nobody has ever in my family brought up the topic of having kids or pressured me to have kids. Nobody on my husband's side, although sadly both of his parents are deceased now, but neither one of them ever pressured us. So I don't understand this concept of feeling external pressure from one's family to have kids. I mean, I've had complete strangers say more to me on this topic than anybody in my own actual family. So this idea that it's some universal stereotype that all parents are just dying for grandchildren, it's like, no, that's incorrect. And this whole idea of not wanting kids, but you want grandkids. What? Like, that, first of all, that's not how that works. And Alicia acknowledges that that's not how that works. But again, it's this idea of a child as a toy, as a plaything, and not this like small human being that you're responsible for taking care of, even when they're not being like super fun and cute and happy, even when they're being like loud and messy and noisy, and you have to change their diapers and you have to feed them and they're crying and they're doing all this other not cute shit. So yeah, just a really weird attitude towards children in this piece. But moving on. But for the children of those would-be grandparents, having kids of their own is becoming a less and less attractive option. Childcare is extravagantly expensive, and paid family leave is a rare luxury. Bringing a new set of chubby cheeks and wonderfully incomprehensible babblings into the world is the most destructive thing one couple can do to the planet. It seems certain that today's babies will be tomorrow's survivors of famine, water shortages, and unprecedented natural disasters and refugee crises. Okay. Aside from the fact that we've managed to hit like the whole woke bingo of reasons why you don't want to have kids, I'm always blown away sometimes by this generation. And I would say, like, I won't say millennials, because millennials, it's kind of like millennials now are in their 30s. Like, these are not like people really in their 20s anymore. So I'd say maybe like late millennials to Gen Z. who think that their generation is like the first generation to do a thing. And I'm just sitting here reading this paragraph. I'm like, you know what? People had children during World War I. People had children during the Great Depression. People had children during World War II. At the height of the Cold War, where people dead-ass thought that Russia could nuke us at any moment, people had kids. What you're going through today ain't shit compared to, historically speaking, the situations that people have lived in and still had kids. Like, you've got it pretty damn good right now, honestly. Like, we're not exactly at peace in the world, obviously, but we're not in the midst of a world war. We're not in the midst of an imminent nuclear threat. We're not in the midst of a financial depression, at least not anything relatively close to the Great Depression, where people were like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to eat tomorrow, but they still had kids. So yeah, get the fuck over yourselves. Like, it's not that bad. Alright, moving on, because this is the part where shit starts getting really weird and creepy. There are no individual solutions to these systematic problems. One person's decision to have a child, or not have a child, won't make the difference between cool breezes and boiling seas. But you know what could make that difference? Lots of people dangling their potential future snugglebugs in front of the noses of their right-wing, centrist, or politically complacent parents to cajole them into supporting policies and candidates that have a hope of redeeming this planet before it becomes one big overheated sandbox. Not the fun kind. Dude, no. No. You do not treat children like they are pawns in your weird political game. Like, that's offensive. Like, that is really gross and offensive. And like I said, even to somebody who's childless by choice and doesn't have, like, an emotional connection to the idea of having a baby or starting a family, or, God forbid, any of you who want to do that but can't for whatever reasons that you can't do that, to hear somebody talk about the idea of having children in this way and using the idea of having children as like this political cudgel. It's like, I know they're big on the personal is the political, but there's some places you don't fucking take that, and you don't hold a child's life over somebody's head to do something this fucking banal and just really stupid and dumb and pointless in the grand scheme of things. It's just a really telling attitude, honestly. Like, it's really telling on yourself if you say something like that and you think, yeah, this sounds like a good, sane, normal idea that normal people would totally do. Like, the fuck is wrong with you? But let's keep going, because it gets worse. Just imagine, your Republican parents are lukewarm on Donald Trump, but will probably support his re-election, or maybe they're Democrats who've sworn they'll never elect a socialist. They've been bugging you and your partner to have kids for years. Perhaps they've even kept your old sandbox and bedtime books in their basement in hopes of breaking them out again when you decide to breed. You sit them down and break the news. You're not going to be making any grandchildren anytime soon. It's too expensive, what with your student loan debt, the schemes of predatory banks, and the disproportionate tax burden you're forced to take on so billionaires can keep their tax breaks. Brief side note. You want to know the quickest way to get a tax break in this country? Have a kid. Have several kids. That is the quickest way to get a fucking tax break in this country. I'd be paying a hell of a lot less taxes if I cranked out a couple kids. But again, I don't want kids. So, yeah, if that's what you're looking for, kids is where it's at. Marriage and kids, those are your tax breaks right there. It's an impossible burden. What with our underfunded and shamefully segregated public education system, your own stagnant wages, and our nation's failures on paid family leave and affordable childcare. It's a huge risk to have a child on purpose when you know that you may be forced to bear another one against your will at any time if the Supreme Court guts Roe v. Wade. It's unethical, what with all the climate change and all, and it's too dangerous. You've seen the news reports on school shootings and know how easy it is for violent men to get their hands on guns. Okay, so why are you not having the babies again? Because again, you're playing the woke bingo for not having babies. Like, is it global warming? Is it money? Is it you're afraid to bring children into this world because of a violent future? What is it? Pick one. You gotta pick one. And really, actually, you have to pick none of them because it's all bullshit. It's never been a super duper awesome, great, happy, fun time to have kids. But people do it. Like, you just do it, and whatever happens, you just fucking deal with it. Because that's what having kids is, and being parents, and having to raise your children in whatever environment happens to exist at the time that you have your children. That's the job. Anyway, your parents pause to envision the lonely quarter century ahead. A far cry from the years of trumpet recitals, slumber parties, and trips to Disney World that they'd long imagined. They ask what they can do to ensure their own legacies, in the form of a pudgy little sweetums and a romper. They'll plead with you, promising to do everything in their power to help ease your concerns. Luckily for them, you have an answer. Radicalize. Lest you are tempted to stop at this point and wonder to yourself, surely she's not suggesting what I think she's suggesting. Surely she is not suggesting blackmailing your parents with your potential offspring, their potential grandchildren, to do things. Let's keep going. It's up to you to set the parameters of your own Grandkid Strike. Maybe you'll be satisfied if your parents prove to you, via voting booth selfie or supervised completion of an absentee ballot, that they've voted for the sufficiently progressive candidate of your choice. Maybe you'll insist they go a step further and CC you on donations they make to the National Network of Abortion Funds, 0 Hour, or the National Women's Law Center. Maybe you'll give them a coupon for a weekend with your hypothetical child for every lobbying day they attend on Capitol Hill or the nearest state house. Maybe you'll promise them one FaceTime session with your spawn for every call they make to a legislator. Maybe you'll have an extra kid for every every act of highly visible civil disobedience they perform, like chaining themselves to the Statue of Liberty or scaling a flagpole to remove the Confederate flag. Whew. Again, back to what I was saying about treating children as objects. This goes even past that, because you're literally suggesting that you should use your grandchildren to blackmail your parents into doing things. And for what it's worth, this is an activity that goes on one way or another in particularly toxic families already, and it's a really fucking vile, gross thing to do. Like, you don't put your children in that kind of position. And so to hear somebody advocate for that, it's just like, it's kind of mind-blowing to me, honestly. Like, that's so fucked up. It's so fucked up. That, like, you would withhold your baby from your parents, not because they're, like, unfit to take care of your child or to see your child, or there's, like, some kind of overriding legal reason, but just because you didn't vote right, or you didn't go do the thing I wanted you to do, or you didn't make enough phone calls, so now you don't get to see your grandchild. I'm like, that's sick. That's really fucked up. And again, it's this attitude of child as object and not child as actual child. Anyway, we're almost done, so let's get back to the piece. The point is, your parents will be forced to decide which is more important to them, their ill-informed allegiance to trickle-down economics, or their ability to lavishly love upon a squishy, nice-smelling, giggly little cutie patootie. The up-by-your-bootstraps mythology, or watching their own children grow into loving, capable parents. NIMBYism, or a fridge covered in finger-painted renderings of whales eating hamburgers. The Second Amendment, or a love bug. In a bath towel with tiny cat ears on the hood, who will possibly look like them and or carry on their last names. Unregulated carbon emissions, or someone who yells "nana" or "pop pop" and runs over for a big wet smooch whenever they enter the room. It's their choice. And you know what? I sincerely hope that any set of parents who is presented with this option from their kids tells their kid, you know what? We were planning on moving to Costa Rica anyway, so fuck you. Don't have grandkids. We don't give a shit. I hope they do. I hope they look them dead in their eye and be like, you know what? I ain't doing shit. I'm going to take myself and my money that I was going to spend on your grandbaby and spend it on myself and go on cruises and move to Mexico or Costa Rica or somewhere in Europe and just have a grand old time, and you can stay here and be miserable. Yeah, I hope that happens. Because this whole idea that, like, every set of parents wants grandchildren is like, okay, first of all, you're being a little presumptuous anyway. You're presuming that your parents want to spend time raising another child, then they already raised your dumb, ungrateful ass anyway. But, okay. Almost there. Almost there. There are a few kinks in this plan, as there are with any promising new organizing tactic. Some people want to have kids so badly that they'll do it even if their parents harumph at the thought of their taxes supporting someone else's child care subsidy. Others will be offended by my suggestion that the serious business of childbearing and rearing be used as a political weapon. Would-be grandparents might worry about a slippery slope. What's to stop their kids from raising the bar after every vote or donation made under duress? Enforcement can be tough, and there must be a critical mass of participation, especially in purple and red states, to make a real difference. There's also something undeniably weird about leaving a woman's reproductive decisions up to her parents. Ya think? Ya fucking think? Maybe that's a little weird? That this whole idea is a little weird? Maybe? And a thought that I had when I was reading this paragraph is, God help you if you do have parents who are desperate for grandkids, and you got a sibling, and they have kids. Guess who's going to be the favorite now? Not you. It's going to be the one that got the grandkids. So, again, shoot yourself in the foot by being bitter. Go for it. I hope you do. But, that's paragraph. But hey, this is just a blog post, and there are no bad ideas in a brainstorm. If a Grandkid Strike seems a leap too far for you, you can start with baby steps. Send your parents a link to this post, subject line, LOL, what a crazy idea, and see what they have to say about the Green New Deal next time family dinner rolls around. And we have now made it to the end of the piece. So, yeah, that's, I mean, even if it is satire, which, like I said, I don't think it is. I think this is actually somebody straight up legit suggesting using children to blackmail your parents into doing things. That's messed up. That is really messed up. And honestly, if somebody does have this particular mentality towards children, maybe they shouldn't be breeding in the first place. Maybe it would be better for grandparents, them, the child, that this just never happens. Because, like I said, there are people that do genuinely think this way. And there are people that do use their children as pawns, as blackmail, as marketing chips within their families. And they kind of ration out time spent with grandchildren to affect certain things from grandparents or from other members of the family. And it's a really disgusting dynamic. And to see it promoted so cavalierly, like this child is not going to be a human being who is going to be emotionally affected by this, like, tug-of-war, push-pull being used as a prop thing. Like, kids notice shit. Like, they're not stupid. Like, kids know what the fuck you're doing. So, yeah. Overall, this is just really disgusting. Even for somebody like me, who doesn't have any particular emotional attachment to the idea of having kids or having a family or having a family who has any particular emotional attachment to having grandkids. This is just weird. So yeah, I wanted to do this episode, so there we go. There it is. As always, links will be in the show notes for the piece if you want to read it yourself. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. And as always, if you did make it this far, thank you for listening. And if you do like this, please rate, comment, and subscribe. You can find me on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, and YouTube. Take care, and until next time.